Non-political. Very proud of it.
Very, very unusual for them to criticize the government.
They had to. These people are crazy. Even me, who's on the right side.
Well, these people do is shame the right. Make it right.
Right.
Good to be here.
Yeah?
Can we pay you to become permanent Encino residents?
Yes?
We're buying a house in Encino.
Mazel tov. Welcome to the neighborhood. Where did you find it?
Coordinate Drive,
Oh, up there. Oh, then Clive is I'll introduce you to Clive. He's your neighbor.
Okay.
And he has a beautiful farm. He actually has a whole farm on his property. Got goats and cows, and bees and trees. Amazing place. Yeah.
I will see that. No, I work at
No. It's an election. Israeli elections are bizarre.
But it's sad.
They're
It's just
colorful.
sad so much.
Sad, interesting, colorful. It's the next stage in the development of our sovereignty.
We can be as big assholes as anyone on the planet.
That's exactly right. Normal people. That's what the Zionists promised us, normalcy. Good morning, Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. I think they just want to schmooze. It's terrific, yeah. Good morning. Schmooze. We could schmooze. There are good Torah portions to schmooze away. This happens to be one worth learning. So we could find another time. Come in. Come in. How you doing? Welcome back. Nice to have you back, bro. Good. Come on in, everybody.
Fashionably late crowd.
Subway just came in, yeah. This is what a New York synagogue is like. Shabbat Shalom. This is a New York synagogue. You sit there, it's empty, and all of a sudden it fills up. The train came in. Is what happens. This is so sweet. Good morning. Good morning. Come on in. Resniks, good morning. How you doing? It's good to see you. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming. Shabbat Shalom. All right, good morning. Thank you for coming this morning. It's good to see all of you. Wow, good morning. It was 37 degrees this morning, so yeah. And it snowed in Granada Hills this week, so about a second, but it was, for kids who live there, it was like a snowed in Granada Hills. And in Phoenix. Yeah. So welcome. It's delightful to have you here. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to learn Torah together today. Following our learning today, you're all invited. There's any number of services going on in the building this morning. There's a Tat Shabbat, a library minyan. In the Sher Lapati, we'll have service this morning. Mickey Wapner is going to celebrate her birthday. I think it's 94, 3, 2. Anyway, 95. Hilla has his 95th birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, Rabbi. Wonderful. You study Torah, you live forever. It's a machaya, right? So please come and celebrate with us. Following that, of course, there's lunch. And after that, the Parsha group will be meeting to learn. A couple of announcements of things going on in the community, of course. Next Shabbos, next Shabbat, we'll have Torah study, of course. And then during the service, my friend Ken Stein, who's professor at the head of the Israel Center and professor of political science at Emory, is going to be our guest. He's an expert in American foreign policy and the Middle East, and worked in Carter administration, a number of other administrations. Will be talking to us about American foreign policy in a very changing, complicated Middle East. He'll give us an understanding of that. He'll speak at about 11:30. We'll break for lunch. After lunch, we'll have a conversation with him. The following Tuesday, which is March the 5th, we'll welcome Jonathan Greenblatt, who's the national CEO of ADL, for a talk about the current state. Come on in. The current state of, you're not lost. Come in. I think they're back over here. There you go. The current state of anti-Semitism and hate in the world. A very important figure in American Jewish life. And then on that Shabbat, which is the 9th, Elise Berkeley, who is the head of the JNF in Southern California, will talk about their work. And then on the 16th, Adam Milstein, who's the founder and head of IAC, will talk about anti-Semitism in America and abroad. So big, important topics on Shabbos morning. Please come and share those mornings with us. This Wednesday night, we finished the College of Jewish Studies, and it was a wonderful series this year. And this Wednesday night, we'll welcome IsraAid. IsraAid is the organization of Israel that sends aid to disaster relief across the world. Wherever there's an earthquake or a flood or a forest fire, and you hear about Israel showing up, it's IsraAid that does this. They're coming Wednesday night to tell us about their work, and everybody's invited to come and see the announcements. They're in the brochure if there's anything else that you'd like to follow up. Come on in, Dave. Come on. All right, we're in the middle of the end of the book of Exodus on page 523, and I gave you a handout. We're going to use both today. Come in. 523, ready? So the book of Exodus is developed in a beautiful way. You have 4 Torah portions which tell us the story of the slavery and liberation of the people Israel from Egypt. And they end with, the 4th one is Bishalach, which is the story of the splitting of the Red Sea and includes the song of the sea and the beginning of the journey across the wilderness. Then 2 Torah portions, Yitro and Mishpatim, talk about the covenant that the people Israel have with God and the terms of that covenant. And then 4 Torah portions, it's Truma and Titzaveh, and Vayakel and Pekudei, talk about the building of the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle, the shrine of the desert. In Truma and Titzaveh, God lays out the plans. Here's what I need you to do. In Vayakel and Pekudei, Moses does it all. It's almost a Xerox of each other. And they talk about Moses fulfilling this and building this Mishkan, and then the presence of God filling the Mishkan and making the Mishkan a place of connection between heaven and earth. And then squeezed in, right in the middle of that, in that beautiful structure of 4 to 4. It's a beautiful, symmetrical, 10 parshiot is an 11th parsha. Like, remember in Sesame Street, one of these things doesn't belong? Right? So this 11th parsha is this one. It's called Kitisa. And it's smashed right in there. And the rabbis in tradition already said, this is out of chronological order, because this should have happened before the Mishkan was built. But that's not the point. It's smashed right in there because it is a commentary on the whole thing. And it starts with, take a census of the people. You each give a half a shekel. This is the beginning of synagogue dues. Okay? So if any of you fetch about synagogue dues, it's right here in the Torah. What do you want me to do? And by the way, a half a shekel plus inflation, you're getting a bargain. You take a half a shekel, extend it over 3,500 years, add 2% inflation, cheap to belong to Valley Beth Shalom. Okay? Then you get chapter 32, which is on page 529, which is the narrative that you know. This is the narrative of the golden calf. And this is a very difficult narrative. Okay, come in, 529, okay? Let's look at it quickly, because I really want to show you a commentary on this narrative today. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down the mountain. So the reason why this can't be here chronologically is because he's already down the mountain. If you're just reading the story, this had to happen when he went up to the mountain. How long was he up on the mountain?
40 days.
40 days. What's the half-life of faith? 40 days. 40 days is as long as Jews can go without someone telling them what to do. Okay? That's the picture. Moses was long coming down. Page 530, top of the page. The people gathered, and the Hebrew is al Aharon. Al means against, on top of. They gathered against Aaron, and they said to him, come make us a god who will go before us. For that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. You send an 80-year-old man up a quaking mountain, right, and he don't come back for 40 days? Do you have a right to say, this don't look real good? And the people say, look, we're stuck out here in the wilderness. We need a God to lead us. Make us that God. And I'll come back to that, because the question I want to ask you is, what do they need it for? What was the motivation? What was the inspiration? And Aaron said to them, and by the way, what's Aaron's motivation? Is Aaron doing this out of fear because they gathered against him? Is Aaron doing this out of envy? Because how long can you give it up to your younger brother before you say it's my turn to lead? Right? What do you mean no? What? You do, huh? You ever raised Jewish children? You know? Never? No. Mine are perfect. Okay, fair enough. I won't argue with that one. Or is Aaron reluctant? Does he think he can turn this in the right direction? And the Midrash, of course, the Midrash wants to turn Aaron into a saint. So they're going to turn everything into Aaron's just trying to fix it. But you can see that there's another side. I mean, people have multiple motivations, let's agree, right? Aaron said to them, take off the gold rings that are in the ears of your wives, your sons and daughters, and bring them to me. Well, that teaches you two things. Number one, that Jewish boys wore earrings back then. So if your son wants to get a piercing, don't worry, right? And number two, he didn't, according to the Midrash, he did that because he didn't think they'd part with their gold, right? And the people took off their gold rings and gave it to them, right? And he took the gold and he cast it in a mold and he made into it a molten calf. All right, it wasn't solid gold, it was wood with gold overlay, okay? Because if it was solid gold, you couldn't have lifted it, okay? So what do you have? And he said to them, now listen to the two statements. He says to them, this is your God, O Israel. No, sorry, they say, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And he says, tomorrow will be a festival of the Lord. So what did he think it was, and what did they think it was? Here you have a classic, this is the classic birth of idolatry. What did he think he built? He thought he built a symbol, right? In ancient mythology, the calf was the footstool of the gods. So for Aaron, the calf, you were supposed to see the calf and imagine God above it, invisible, but standing above it. Okay? In the very same way, now to get complicated, in the very same way that the Ark of the Covenant has two kruvim, two angels on its top, and the understanding is that God is above that. God is called in the book of Psalms, Yoshev Kruvim. God who is sitting up or resting above the kruvim, above the angel statues of the shrine, of the ark. So Aaron, this is a place to worship God. This is a symbol of God. This is not God. What did the people say? This is God. This thing is divine. This object has some sort of divinity to it. This is what Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, called mixing up the symbol for its referent. Mixing up the symbol for its referent. The symbol is supposed to point to something beyond, but instead of looking for that pointing, you embrace the symbol as if itself were sanctified. Campbell says it's like a hungry person coming into a restaurant and trying to eat the menu. Not understanding that this is a symbol. But when you worship the symbol instead of the thing it's supposed to refer to, that's one of the species of idolatry, because you're worshiping the wrong thing. You're ignoring the transcendent for something that's immanent. Why would you worship the symbol instead of what it's pointing to? Because it's visible, because it's tangible, because it's palpable, because I can manipulate it. Because it's there, it's something that I can turn and twist into my own purposes. I can make it my own. And this becomes a very interesting power dynamic. Okay, now, before we get to why did they build the golden calf? What was the inspiration for building a calf? Anybody got a guess? What's the inspiration? Michael, hang on, we have a microphone here. Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Douglas. It appears that what the Israelites are looking at the empires around them, the kingdoms around them.
Right.
And what they see is that there is the Baal, which is a bull, often portrayed as a bull.
Right.
They see other symbols which have been created which are actually worshipped as God figures.
Right.
And they are imitating basically what they know, not the philosophical ideas that are trying to be put forth as this is a symbol that represents. When they see it, it is not a symbol, it is the manifestation of God.
Okay, so when you live in a world in which people worship tangible, physical God things, and then you tell people, no, your God can't be seen, can't be touched, right, can't be sensed, that's a very difficult thing. So they want what everybody else wants. They want a God they can touch. Yes. So this is classical cultural assimilation, right? They want a God that they can touch. So in the Midrash, in the rabbinic Midrash, the rabbinic Midrash sort of puts them on trial. And the defense in this trial stands up and says, I'm going to defend the people of Israel. And the defense in the trial was a parable. It's about a guy who moves into a bad neighborhood. And all day long, his kid walks around this bad neighborhood full of thieves and hookers and pimps and pushers and users. And then the kid, Nebuch, goes bad. And the father says, oh, what did I do wrong? Right? And the father blames the kid. You should have had a moral background. And the rabbis say, no, it's the father's. You shouldn't have put him in that neighborhood. Israel, you put Israel in Egypt. What is in Egypt? Egypt is the world capital of idolatry. Everywhere you look, there's a statue of something that's divine. No wonder they want something that's divine. They want a thing that's divine. That's one of the answers. All right, what else? Who's got the mic? Yes, who's got the mic? Who's got the mic? What inspires them? What moves them? Why do they want this? Please.
When we read Bible,
Yeah.
we have to realize that from the meaning of Genesis
Yeah.
up to the end, everything is on the basis of the people on that time thinking.
Right. Well, what are they
Or
thinking?
Whatever we see
Right.
does not necessarily mean that we get the same meaning.
Okay, but what are they thinking? That's what I want to know.
This is the symbol for those people to accept
Yeah.
that was the God.
Yes.
That is what it is.
Yes. Okay, but why do they want it? What does the story say? What do they want? What do they want? What do they want? They're standing in the middle of the desert. You ever been out in the middle of the desert? It's a scary place. You've been to the Sinai Desert? Anyone ever been to the Sinai Desert? But back in the day when it was you could go, we used to take us on these Jeep trips. That was a kind of forbidding place, you know? It's a scary place. Well, that's different. That's a different kind of idolatry. But that's for those of us of a certain generation. We used Dahab and Nueva. These were beaches down on the Red Sea that those of us who were spending time in Israel at one time used to go to. Yes, please.
So I have maybe a little different.
Go ahead, tell us.
I'm thinking the people were products of their environment.
Yes, that's what Michael
They
said,
just
right.
hate, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But their approach was basically celebratory. They wanted to show their obedience to God, and that was their vehicle of doing so.
Billy, you're such a great defense attorney. God in heaven, if I ever get charged with something, you're coming with me, right? Your Honor, he didn't do this out of anything else except celebration of higher values. Woo, wow. Yes, please, yeah.
I've got a general question about the idolatry that I've never quite understood, which
Good.
is, if the thing itself is supposed to be divine,
Yeah.
isn't the creator of that thing more powerful? So isn't Aaron?
Yeah, that's the
I don't quite
idolatry.
get that.
The paradox of idolatry is that's in the Abraham story, when Abraham is selling idols in the marketplace, he says to the people that buy the idols, "I made this morning. How can you worship it this afternoon?" Right? I made it, but that's the point. What is idolatry? It is I'm projecting something of myself into the world and then reappropriating it as a god. And what is it I'm specifically projecting into the world? My fear. They're afraid. When people are afraid, what do? They'll pray to God, but what kind of God are they praying to, and what are they praying for, and what language are they using? When people are afraid, first of all, they do weird things. I don't know if you knew this. People are afraid. They project their fear into the world, and then they reappropriate that fear as a God who's going to protect them. Right? You want to add something, Elon? Go ahead.
Yeah, so what if there were divisions among the people?
Sure there were, because when Moses comes down, there's a big argument among them. Right, go ahead.
So in order to find a solution, they create a God that will bring them together.
That's another part, this diffusion. If there's not something that gathers us all together, there's a sense that there will be diffuse all over the place.
Right. So they create a God that will help them create a unified vision.
Yeah, in a certain sense. Remember the Tower of Babel? We did that story some months ago. And the motivation of Babel was, if we don't build something that unites us, we'll be diffuse all over the land. All right, take a look inside. Hang on a second. So tomorrow will be Aaron says this is a thing to worship God, but the people don't buy it. they think the thing is God itself, or they think the thing has some kind of power. It is an expression of their fear, and it's going to protect them. Early the next morning, they offer up burnt offerings and sacrifices. They sat down to eat, and they rose to dance. They have a big bar mitzvah party. Now, as in the movies now, if this were a movie, this would be a cutaway. The Academy Awards are tomorrow night, so I'm aware of this. This would be a cutaway, and you'd now go, meanwhile, at the top of the mountain, right, the Lord spoke to Moses. And what does God say to Moshe? Hurry down. What's God always telling Moshe? Come on up, come on up. All of a sudden he says, no, now go down. For your people who you brought out of the land of Egypt have acted basely. Anyone, yes, did anyone ever turn to their spouse and say, your daughter just had a temper tantrum and she just locked herself in her, your child, God says your people that you brought out of Egypt, right? They've been quick to turn aside from the way that I enjoined them. They've made themselves a molten calf, bowed low to it, and sacrificed to it, saying, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. How's God feeling? The people are afraid. Aaron is frustrated. How is God feeling right now? Angry. Why is he angry? Why is he angry? Douglas, why is he angry? You got the mic.
Because, like 20 chapters ago, he's saying you shall not make a sculptured image.
Two chapters, not 20 chapters.
23.
There was chapter 20, 12
Right.
chapters, fair enough.
12 chapters.
12 chapters. I just told you, don't make idols, right? And you agreed. You said, not seven Nishma, we'll do it, right? I thought I did enough miracles to prove to you that I'm your God. I just went through all the trouble of destroying Egypt just to prove to you that I'm God. And that wasn't enough for you. Right? 40 days and all those miracles disappear from your memory and you're worshiping another calf. Right? God's like, God in the Bible doesn't understand people. God in the Bible has a really hard time understanding people. And you get this image of over and over again, the God of the Bible, as it were, scratching his head going, huh? What? You did what? Right? I mean, starting with Adam in the garden, right? I gave you the garden. I gave you everything a human being can want. And you did what? You ate my fruit. Like, what? Over and over again, you get this God who's like, and here you get this God going, huh? Like, what do you need? Like, what do you want? At what point does it change you? So God now gets really angry. That frustration turns to rage. Michael, you want to add something? So pass the mic.
One thing
Go ahead.
the one thing that this whole thing sort of revolves around
Yeah.
is the idea that we start out with a God who plays magic tricks. We have, God splits the sea, God does all these magic tricks, he gives them manna, he does all these things, and now all of a sudden it's the revelation that when there's one more magic trick, they don't get it. These are not magic tricks, these are symbols again, but they want magic. Because if I don't give them magic, they will turn against God. They will turn against all the ideas that we've just done through Exodus,
Right.
through Genesis and Exodus. And therefore, the magic isn't working. And I think at this point, we see a transition from magic to the realization that human beings have to have a responsibility to do it themselves.
Well,
They can't
that's
charge.
let's take both of those ideas one at a time, because the solution is going to be something we need to debate. Let's take the first point. I think is very apt, very very perceptive. Look, people are afraid, and when people are afraid, they go look for a power to protect them. Right? That's why the weakest kid on the play yard, on the schoolyard, is going to go hang out and be the best buddy of the bully, because the bully will protect him, right? And even if the bully beats him up every now and again, at least he knows he's protected, right? There's this, I'm afraid, and I go looking for a power to protect me. So God shows up in Exodus, and what does God do? God says, I want to be your God, and I'll show you what, I'm more powerful than Pharaoh. And the whole beginning of Exodus is, I'm more powerful than Pharaoh. And over and over and over again, he keeps beating the living daylights out of Pharaoh, and finally he kills him at the end. And okay, now we'll be with you. But if that's the basis of your relationship, I'm afraid and you'll protect me, then the moment I become afraid again and you're not there to protect me, I'm going to go find someone else to protect me. Michael calls that magic, right? It's this magic. And so there's no loyalty there. There's no idealism there. There's no love there. It's all based on a reaction of fear. It's all based on a reaction of fear. And when fear surfaces again in this relationship, then I'm going to go look for somebody. I'll look for someone else who's going to protect. I'll look for another bully, another bully to protect me. So the question is, if fear is the basis of your faith, and what you do is basically it's a transaction. It's a transactional faith, right? I'll give you my loyalty, you protect me. Right? It's the mafia, right? You know, really nice looking people you got there, you know. Shame if anything happened to it, right? I'll pay you protection. I'll pay your money. I'll pay for I'll give you my loyalty, you'll protect me. Right? That's the transaction. And then the moment that breaks down because he's gone, Moses went up the mountain and he's gone. And Moses comes down and says, I got a better idea for you. Together we'll make justice. Together we'll make a just society. Together we'll learn to see human beings in the infinite preciousness they are. And this people says, yeah, that's great. Who's going to take care of us? Where's our food? Where's lunch? Right? We'll deal idealism. Where's lunch? And the moment lunch is 10 minutes late, I'm going to go find someone else. You see the transaction? So the question now is, how do you loosen the grip of fear and invite people to engage God in a different way? And God hasn't figured that out yet. Moses hasn't figured out that. I'm not sure the Bible ever figures that. That's what we're going to get to in a minute, because I'm going to show you a commentary on this story. All right, Bill, please.
I've been thinking about this whole story as you've been talking, and it occurs to me that for our people to have had the jewelry and the gold and the earrings, etc., dates back to a much earlier time when they were told to visit the Egyptians and collect what they could from them. So the authors of this whole story already knew or anticipated or had a sneak preview of what was coming, so that this fit together.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
A literary whole. Right. Not just that, Bill, but I can tell you a secret. They were so willing to give up their jewelry to build the golden calf, and we learned our lesson. So every time my wife asks me for jewelry, I thank her for her loyalty to the God of Israel. Right? Every time she says, buy me a piece, you know, we go to Israel, I like to buy her jewelry in Israel. I say, thank you, your loyalty and love of the God of Israel. You see that? Because Jewish women will not be fooled again. Men, yes. Women, no. The women come out much better.
Yeah, Rabbi, I really don't like the term that religion is based on fear.
Their religion is.
Can't we use hope? Couldn't our people feel that since God took us out of Egypt, we had hope that he would take care of us in the land of Israel?
Yeah.
And we didn't have to look at God with an emotion of fear, but we could have looked with an emotion of hope.
I think that is the question. I think you have just articulated. Hold the mic. Hold on. Hang on. I know everybody wants to give a drush. I think, Steve, you have just articulated the central question of the text. What's it going to be? Fear or hope? What kind of people are you if your religion is based in fear? What is the God you worship? What directions do you go in? And what kind of people are you if you embrace a religion of hope, a religion of ideals, of human dignity, of ethics, It's a different kind of faith. The question is, how do you loosen the grip of fear from people and give them a faith of hope? How do you do that? That's the question.
God just took us out of...
Yeah, and you have a very childish people who have just seen all of this oppression, and they're still living under that headspace. And the question is, how do you change them? How do you change people from fear to hope? How do you change people from... Because fear closes you up. Fear makes you clench. Fear means I trust nobody. Fear means I'm going to do whatever I can to protect me and mine. To hell with you and yours. I mean, it's really the question. Hope opens you up and says, okay, we can do this together. There's some solidarity here. This is exactly the question. And Michael points out, Michael's point was very important, which is that God's been playing the fear game better than anybody. And now all of a sudden he expects them to play hope. But you know, the whole 10 plagues narrative is, yeah, you want protection? Let me show you, you know? It's like, you know, I'm the bigger Don than you know, Corleone. I'm the bigger godfather than he is. I mean, you've been playing this fear game, and now the question is, now you expect them to suddenly change? One event at Mount Sinai is going to change their whole attitude? All right, take a look inside. Now, God shows us an aspect, a very interesting aspect of human personality. The Lord said to Moshe, further said to Moshe, I see that this is a stiff-necked people. That's you. I just want you to make sure you know what you're talking about here. Now let me be that my anger blaze forth against them, and I may destroy them and make of you a great nation. So what does God say to Moses? This people frustrates the hell out of me. So I got an idea. Let's kill them, and we'll start over with you. I mean, we did that with the Noah, right? We wiped out all of humanity and started out with one guy, right? Let's do it again. I'll just wipe them out right here. It's in the middle of the desert. No one will see us. Right? As the great rabbi and sage Oliver Hardy once said, no one will be the wiser. Because we're out in the middle of the desert, no one's watching. So they got lost in the desert and they fell into a crevasse, right? And I'll give it 10 generations. And your kids, you, Moshe, you'll be the new Israel. Instead of being B'nai Yisrael, we'll be B'nai Moshe. Good idea, right? Now, what do you get in God? That's frustration. I think we're going to see this later when we get to the book of Numbers, which this is really the whole theme of the book of Numbers. This is the frustration of the idealist. You have an idealist who believes in something lofty and transcendent, and his eyes shine with passion and inspiration. And suddenly he meets the real material of human society, the real material of human beings. And what happens to the idealist? He gets disillusioned and frustrated. And when idealists get disillusioned and frustrated, they tend to break things, right? I want to create utopia, and the only thing standing between me and utopia is your goddamn selfishness and intransigence. So I'll show you, I'll destroy you and start over again. This is why Plato was dead wrong. You can't make philosophers into kings. If philosophers become kings, they kill people. Lenin was a philosopher king. He couldn't deal with the intransigence of the Russian people, so he killed 20 million of them. Mao was a philosopher king. He killed 40 million of them. Because why? Because people say, you know, I don't want to leave the city and go live on a farm. Oh yeah? You know, this is the idealist, right? Now, there's only one caveat here. There's one teeny little caveat which you would pass over if you didn't read it very carefully. Look at the statement again. God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I see this as a stiff-necked people, and in Hebrew it's ve'ata hanichali. Let me be that. What does let me be that? This is for the lawyers in the room. This is when you say, may it please the court. When do you say, may it please the court? When you're about to do something in court, right? You have to start by saying, may it please the court, right? Am I right about that? Oh, no, you're not. Oh, whatever. Right? Right? He's asking for permission. So that's usually just a figure of speech. It's usually just a polite figure of speech. If you please. If you please. Right? With your majesty's permission. But this is God talking to Moshe. And the rabbis pick that up right away. So what the rabbis understand is that what God's asking Moshe for when he says hanichali is stop me before I do this. Again, any of you parents of teenagers? Any of you parents of teenagers? Anyone turn to your spouse and say, don't let me go into that room because I'll do something terrible, right? Just stop me before I do something stupid. Right? God says, I really want to kill him. And he knows. And he's asking Moshe, stop me. I mean, they're really a married couple. You got to know this. They're really a married couple. Because whenever God gets angry, Moshe calms him down. And whenever Moshe gets distraught, God calms him down. And at the end of the story, there is a beautiful midrash that when Moses dies, God cries and says, who's going to calm me down now? Because look what happens next. Moses implored the Lord, said, let not your anger blaze against your people whom you delivered in the land of Egypt with great power. Let not the Egyptians say it was evil intent. He delivered them. Turn from your anger. Renounce the plan. Remember your servants. He lays out all these arguments. Look, you're a better God than that. Come on, calm down. Take a walk around the galaxy. You'll calm down. Right? Number one. Number two, what would the Goyim say? You know, listen, you're out here. Yes, it's true. There's not a lot. But the Washington Post will find out, and they'll publish it on page 1. And it's going to look really bad for you when it makes CNN. So you really don't want interrogating you at night. So, you know, don't do it. And then he says, remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know, yes, they're stiff-necked, but they had nice parents. And maybe in a generation or 12, you know, you'll end up with someone you like. And you know, and you swore saying you would take them to the land. You made a promise, and you can't go back on your promise. And I know. And I'm on a roll here, and you're interrupting me. And God says, okay, you're right. It calms down. Okay, I won't destroy them. But go down and see what you can do. Okay? Who's got the go? Yes, please. Hi, sir. Pass it down. There you go.
There's an irony because after Noah,
Yeah.
God promises that he'll never destroy another world.
Yes.
And God completely forgets that promise and then says to Moses, I'm going to destroy them.
Well, not the
And
world.
that's-
He's not destroying the world. He's destroying like one, like rather
Right, but that
egregious
sense
people.
of forgetfulness is the same forgetfulness that the people have when Moses goes up.
Well, yes.
And
Yeah.
so there's that sort of divinity in both of them. And then the other piece of it is that the people don't know from God. They only know from Moses. And so that calf is a replication of Moses.
Yeah, it's the
not
leader.
of God. And so the irony is like Moses is the linchpin in the whole story.
Yeah.
Right? God, the
Sorta.
only one that's kind of holding really to his word is Moses, not God and not the people.
Well, because they need to see something. And he's what they see. He's the one that brought it. He's the transitional object. He's the one who brought them out of the land. He's the one that brought them into the desert. He's the one that brought them food. He's the one that, you know. So you're right. But, you know, so it's how many parents of teenagers had to be reminded how much I love my kid? You know, of course I love my kid. Just go to your room so I can remember that I love you. You know, just get out of my face for a few minutes so I can remember how much I love you. And then Moshe comes down and he smashes the tablets and he burns the calf and he makes them drink it. My mother did this once when we were kids. She got mad at us and anyway, it's a long story. Right? And then God says, I'm not going to be in the middle of this people. Moses moves out of town. He moves out to the suburbs. And then slowly there's a reconciliation. There is a wonderful midrash, a wonderful interpretation of this story, which is offered us by the Bible itself and by the rabbis. So remember that the Hebrew Bible has 3 parts: Torah, prophets, and writings. Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. That's why it's called Tanakh. It's the first letter of each of those words, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. So the rabbis of the Talmud wanted us to become literate in our own scriptures, so every week there's a Torah portion. This is the Torah portion for this week. To every Torah portion, there is a section of the prophets assigned. That's called the Haftarah. Haftarah means the closing section, because it's read after the Torah is read. So they choose a shtickle of the of the prophets to add to the Torah portion as a sort of amplification or contrast. And then there used to be a section of Ketuvim as well, a psalm that was added for the day, although that tradition has sort of waned in certain circles. The Haftarah, the prophetic section for this Shabbos, is Elijah. Now, Elijah is an interesting commentary on Moses and the golden calf. Elijah lives in the 9th century, 800s. He lives at a time when the northern kingdom of Israel, the kingdom is split after Solomon, and the northern kingdom becomes very powerful and prosperous, but politically unstable. No king lasts more than a few years, and they keep getting knocked off by their generals, okay? So a king rises in the north of Israel named Omri. He's the general. He kills his king and crowns himself king. And he rules, and then he turns over a fairly stable, prosperous kingdom to his son, whose name is Ahab. Okay, he was reading Moby Dick and named him for the captain. And Achav, or Ahab, the first thing that Omri does for his son is establish an alliance with the Phoenician king who lives to the north of us by marrying Ahab to the daughter of the Phoenician king, and her name is Jezebel. Okay? Now, her name probably wasn't Jezebel, because in Hebrew, Zevel means she's trash. Okay? So the chances are that her name was, something else. Dorothy or Muriel or Sharon or Jennifer or something. But the Bible doesn't like her, because it doesn't like him. Because you're living in the north of Israel, and there's three situations which make this sort of religiously perilous now. Situation number one is the north of Israel. Israel is this funny land where there's no river. You knew this, right? It's like California. It's watered by rainfall. If it rains, you eat. If it doesn't rain, you don't eat. So you're dependent upon rainfall. It's just like California in that way. And so there's this deep sense of dependence, and you're looking for rain. And if you don't get rain, there's a basic existential fear that we're going to starve to death. That's the north of Israel. And the north of Israel is very lush and green when it rains and very pathetic when it doesn't. So that's the first problem. The second problem, and by the way, and so the local cult is, as Michael pointed out, is the cult of Baal and Asherah. The Canaanites have a local fertility cult. It's the male principle of the universe is Baal, who is the sky god. He is the god of thunder, lightning, and rain. And Baal is symbolized by a bull, okay, for obvious reasons. And the earth goddess is Mother Earth, who is Asherah, right, or Ishtar, or eventually Esther. And she is symbolized either by a tree or often by a figurine of a very pregnant woman, fertile Mother Earth. And the magic of Canaanite religion is to get the Baal god of the sky to rain his fructifying seed down upon the earth and to fertilize Mother Earth. Get it? Mm-hmm. Right? This is really erotic, visual, sensual religion. People would come to shul if we did this, right? I mean, so and there were all sorts of sexual rites that were used as part of Canaanite religion. This is the neighborhood religion we moved into. So you move into that neighborhood, and you say to your family, no, our God is no bull or woman. You can't see him. And our God is moral. You can't manipulate him the way you can manipulate Baal. And our God is interested in your moral, ethical behavior. And people say, yeah, that's great, but I really like what the neighbors are doing. If you think Christmas trees are attractive, you just think about Baal and Asherah. And so it is that every time that we have excavated any village or tell in the north of Israel and gotten down to that level, guess what we found? In every Israelite village in the north of Israel that's ever been excavated, they found hundreds and hundreds of Baals and Asherahs. Little figurines. You can go to the Israel Museum and see them. They're all there. Why? Because this was a very attractive cult. And it's attractive on both levels. It's palpable, it's physical. It offers you the magic. You can manipulate the world, right? And besides, if you're fearful, you tend to want to hedge your bets. Yeah, I'll worship the God of my ancestors. But yeah, it can't hurt. Just make sure, right? That everyone who, carries a rabbit's foot in their purse, that, or has a horseshoe over the, it can't hurt, okay? That's number one. Number two is Jezebel. What you have is when you bring foreign princesses into a capital, what you do is you build a shrine for their gods. So Jezebel becomes the sort of the focus of Canaanite worship. She becomes the sponsor of Canaanite worship in the town of Samaria, which is the capital of this kingdom. She becomes the sponsor of this. And you have a struggle now between religious purists and those and the populace in its need to participate in the outside stuff, right? And that's what the story of Elijah the prophet's all about. Eliyahu, right? His name, by the way, is Eliyahu. Eli, my God, is Yah, is Adonai, who? That's the only one. He's the one. Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, walks into this and he is responsible for turning the people away from this Baal worship and toward the exclusive worship of God. But the whole idea of an exclusive worship of any God is beyond this people's imagination. And that becomes his task. So the Haftorah for this particular Torah portion, and there's many parallels between these two stories, is the story of Eliyahu, of Elijah, and his contest with Baal. So take up the page that I gave you. And we'll take a look at a little bit of Elijah lore, which is really interesting stuff, right? So the first, I just gave you a little bit of the introduction. Ahab, son of Omri, became king of Israel in the 38th year. He reigns for 22 years. He did what was displeasing to the Lord. The book of Kings is an editorial, not a newspaper. I mean, the book of Kings it has an opinion. It judges every king based upon his loyalty to the God of Israel. Ahab was one of the worst, right? More than all who preceded him. He was the worst. Not content to follow the sins of his predecessors, he took his wife Jezebel, king of Baal of Phoenicia, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. He erected an altar to Baal in the temple of Baal, which he built in Samaria. So right in downtown capital, you build an altar to the Canaanite god. Do you see the problem here? Right? Ahab made a sacred post. A sacred post is a representation of the tree, which is a representation of Asherah. That's the female goddess. So you're embracing male and female goddess, right? He did more to vex the Lord of Israel than all the kings of Israel preceded him. They really don't like him. Do you get that sense? Okay? Elijah of Tishbe. Tishbe is a village in Gilad. Where is Gilead? If you're facing a map of Israel, you see Israel. To the right of Israel is Jordan, right? Go north of Jordan, just to that southern Syria. That's where Gilead is, okay? Southern Syria, northern Jordan. That's where, today it's a terrible place to be, but that's where Gilad is. So Elijah comes from where? He's not a city dweller. He's a village guy. He comes from the hinterlands. And he enters the big city. And what does he see in the big city? Baal worship everywhere. And he's really touched by this. He's really enraged by this. And said, as the Lord lives, that's an oath, the God of Israel whom I serve, there will be no dew or rain except at my bidding. Now the irony is, worshiping Baal was a way to make it rain. So Elijah says, because you've turned your back on the God of Israel, you're not going to get any rain. You're not going to get any rain. And the word of the Lord said, leave this place and go and wait in the wadi till I tell you. And he goes and he waits in the wadi. So much later in the 3rd year, God says to Elijah, go up here before Ahab, and I'll send rain upon the earth. And Elijah goes to Ahab. So the prophet confronts the king. The prophet, who is the religious purist, who wants nothing but the pure worship of God, and wants to try to turn this faith from fear to hope, or from fear to ideal to ethics, confronts the king, who is the real politician. He's involved in the power of this kingdom. And he's going to embrace whatever symbols it takes in order to keep himself in power. And if Baal is what the people want, Baal is what Ahab's going to give them. Get it? So this is a political confrontation as well. And he says, is that you, troubler of Israel? And he said, it's not I who brought trouble in Israel, but you and your father's house, by forsaking the commandments of the Lord and going after the Baalim. So he says, summon all Israel to join me at Mount Carmel. The golden calf story takes place where? At Mount Sinai. So just as at Mount Sinai you're going to have a trial, here at Mount Carmel. Where's Mount Carmel, by the way? It's above Haifa. Everybody know where that is? Okay, it's a beautiful place, by the way. And there's a falafel, oh, never mind. Join me, there is a falafel place there to die for. Together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So what had happened is, I took this part out. Jezebel goes on a campaign killing all the prophets of Adonai, of God. And she embraces all the prophets of Baal. She's trying to turn the kingdom away from Israelite religion toward Baal religion. Politically, she's trying to turn the kingdom into a full client state of her father, who's the king of Phoenicia. So this is as much a political fight for the independence of Israel as it is a religious fight. You have to know that. You have to keep that in mind. Politics and religion in that day never got separated, unlike today. Ahab sent orders and he gathered the prophets at Mount Carmel. Now the next scene is just such a delicious, I mean, I don't know that this could have happened. It's just such a great, it's a piece of literature. You have to just, this is the Haftorah for today. So keep in mind that this is the commentary that the rabbis are bringing to reflect upon the golden calf story. Elijah approached the people and said, how long will you keep hopping between two opinions? Think of the Israelites in Mount Sinai, right? Whose side are you on, God's or the calves? And here the question is, whose side are you on, Baal or God's? And what bothers him isn't even the Baal worship. It's not the Baal worship what bothers him even more than the worship of Baal? The fact that they're not loyal to anybody. The word hopping, by the way, is piseach, from the word Pesach. You keep hopping. You're religious opportunists. You keep changing the channel. You have no loyalty. What's wrong with you? You have no loyalty. And that's what bothers him, right? So he says, you hop into, if the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal, follow him. Pick one. Elijah is this kind of purist who says religion has to. He doesn't understand the opportunism. He doesn't understand the religion of fear. He doesn't understand their need to control, to gain some control over their world, and how all of this is a projection of their fear. He wants loyalty. And the people didn't answer him. He says, I'm the only prophet of God left, of the Lord left. The prophets of Baal are 450. Let's have a trial. Let's have a contest. Right? I mean, imagine if you could settle the world's religious conflicts with a game of cards. Let's bring the Pope and the best rabbi in the world and the head of and the imam who's the best imam and the biggest Buddhist. Let's sit them down at a table in Vegas with a deck of cards and a pack of chips and a poker chip, and let's have it out. Which head rabbi? Yes, right. Okay. First we'll have the game among the rabbis, right? I mean, this is what it is. This is exactly what it is. It's a video game, right? This is what's that? What's the Ready Player One, right? He says, let's do it. Let's have it out once and for all. Bring me 2 young bulls. Let them choose one. Cut it up. Lay it on the wood. Let them not apply fire. I'll prepare another bull. I'll lay it on the wood. I won't apply fire. You invoke your God. I'll invoke my God. Whichever God responds with fire, that's God. Seems reasonable. Doesn't it seem reasonable? So Elijah says, okay, you go first. All right, so they took a bull and they prepared it and they invoked God, Baal by name. I'm on verse 26. And they shouted, oh, Baal, answer us. But there was nothing, no sound. So they performed a hopping dance. And when noon came, Elijah mocked them. This is so great, because you got to say that the storyteller of the Bible is having fun with this. Elijah mocked them, saying, Shout louder. After all, he's a god. Maybe he's in conversation. Maybe he's detained or on a journey, or maybe he's asleep and he'll wake up. So they shouted louder and gashed themselves with knives and spears. The self-flagellation is part of many cults, according to the practice, until blood streamed over them. And when noon passed, they kept raving until the hour of the meal offering, which is 3 in the afternoon, until, and there was no sound and nothing happened.
You lost.
Well, let's see if he can win. Then Elijah said to the people, come close. And the people came close. And he repaired the damaged altar of the Lord. And he took 12 stones according to the 12 tribes, right? And around the altar he made a trench, big trench. And he laid out the wood and he cut up the bull. And he said, this sounds like David Copperfield. You ever watch one of these magicians do this? I'll do the trick now with my hand tied behind my back, right? I'll do the trick blindfolded, right? I'll do the trick while you light my feet on fire. You ever watch these guys on TV? America's Greatest Talent. What is that show? America's Got Talent. Yeah, God's Got Power. That's what this is called, right? He says, all right, fill 4 jars with water, pour it over the burnt offering. Do it a second time. Do it a third time. So not only do you have the wood and the altar, but now it's soaking wet, right? Okay? And the water ran down and it filled the trench, and when it was time to present the meal offering, Elijah came forward and he said, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your bidding. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and you have turned their hearts backwards. Then if you know what's going to happen, right? Then fire from the Lord descended. Everybody give me an amen. Amen. That's good, a hallelujah, right? And he consumed the burnt offering. Give me a hallelujah. There you go. The wood, the stone, the earth. I mean, not just the bull and the wood, but the stone was burned up, and the earth, and licked up the water. And when the people saw this, you're going to laugh at this one. When the people saw this, they flung themselves on their faces and cried, Adonai hu ha-Elohim, Adonai hu ha-Elohim. God is Lord, or Lord is God. When do we say that? Anybody happen to know when that's recited?
Yom Kippur.
Yeah, when in Yom Kippur?
Right
at the end. So at the very end of Yom Kippur, after fasting for 25 and a half hours and reciting all those prayers and standing up and sitting down and standing up and sitting down and then standing through all of Nila, this is the rabbis have such a great sense of humor, and you don't even know this. At the end, they make us say what? The words that the people say when they saw the fire from God come down and consume the sacrifice of Elijah, which means, who are we on Yom Kippur? We're those poor schleppy Israelites who can't decide whether Baal is God or whether God is God. You don't get the joke. All right. I thought that's a very funny joke. It's just very we get to replay that drama. And then what happens is now he becomes the zealot he is. He says, seize the prophets, let not one of them get away. And they took them down to the wadi and they killed them all. And then he says to Ahab, you better get out of here with your chariot because it's going to start raining. And Ahab says, what is it? It's a blue sky. And Elijah says, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it starts pouring rain on Israel. Okay, did he succeed? Did Elijah succeed? That's the Haftarah, by the way. The rabbis chose that Haftarah for the golden calf story. Did he succeed? Well, he turned them to God. He turned them away from Baal, because they're at least going to be able to tell their children, oh, we were there, boy, and it was something. You should have seen that fire came down from heaven. Right? Are they going to give up their Baal worship? No. Well, no. Yeah, I think they will, except for one small problem. What has he done to God? He's turned himself into a magician. It's exactly right. And he's turned God into another idol. Because what is God now? God is now another idol. You want rain? Pray to God. Right? You want good weather? Pray to God. God's going to do what you tell him to do. God, you can get out of God what you need him to. Give me a raise in my allowance. Instead of a God who demands anything, who turns you into a human being of some ethical core, you've turned God into just another big idol. Right? You've turned God into another big... Remember there used to be a guy on television, Reverend Ike. Remember Reverend Ike? I can teach you to smell money. Right? And if you worship God and you sent $25 to this guy, he'd send you a blessed prayer shmata. And if you put it on your radio every Sunday morning, money will come your way. I should do this. I could do this. I could get rather rich. I mean, in this environment, listen, and he didn't have social media. Good God. Go fund me, you know. You've turned him into another idol. You haven't really created loyalty to the God of Israel. You've simply produced a magic trick that's a bigger magic trick than the other guys did. And you've just created of God another idol. So Elijah has an existential crisis now. And the crisis is quite... Let's skip 21, because that's an ethical... We'll come back to that some other time. Look, go back to the bottom at 19. You see where it says 19 at the bottom of the second page? When Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done... So Ahab goes home and tells Jezebel that, he just killed all the prophets of Baal. And Jezebel sent a message to him saying, "Thus and more may the gods do if by this time tomorrow I have not made you like one of them." She puts a contract out on his life. Frightened, he fled at once for his life. So where's he going to go? Where do all prophets go when they're frightened? They go out to the desert. He gets to Beersheba, which is in Judah, and he let the servant there. And he himself went a day's journey in the wilderness. He comes to a broom bush, just a bush, and he sat down under it and prayed that he might die. Who else was a day's journey from Beersheba praying that they might die? Oh, that's a good trivia question. Hagar. Remember Hagar? Remember Hagar was sent out from, right? Right? So he's out in the middle of the desert and he says, I have no reason to live. I have failed in everything in my life. His life mission was to turn the hearts of Israel toward God. And he realized that the moment of his greatest triumph, that he did the wrong thing. That he succeeded, but he succeeded in exactly doing what he didn't want to do. So he lies down and he says, enough. Take my life, I'm no better than my father's. There's a thing called death by cop, This is called death by prayer. He's praying for death. Suicide, right? He lay down and fell asleep. An angel touched him and said, arise and eat. It's a Jewish mother, right? I know you're depressed. First eat, then we'll talk, right? And he looked, and there was a cake baked on stones and a jar of water, and he ate and he drank, and he lay down again, and the angel came a second time and said, arise and eat, for the journey will be too much. And he rose and he ate and he drank. With strength from the meal, he walked 40 days and 40 nights as far as the mountain of God at Horeb. What is this text pointing to? 40 days and 40 nights. And Horeb, what is Horeb? Sinai. So what is Elijah? He is retracing the steps of Moses, only backwards. Right? Moses came from the desert into Canaan. Where is Elijah going? From Canaan back out to the desert. Why? Because the truth that I need to find is out there. Israel has lost its way, and I have to go back out to the desert and reiterate the journey. I have to reiterate the journey. So he finds himself at Mount Sinai, right where Moses was. Right where Moses was, right? And he went into a cave and he spent the night. And then the word of the Lord came to him. So after being 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, you too will hear the voice of God. Let me tell you something. Right? No, you go out by yourself in the Sinai desert and not eat and drink for 40 days, you will hear God's voice. Okay? And God said to him, why are you here? Now, that's a great question. What can that question mean? Where's here? Where's here? Is it on earth? Is it why are you in the world? What's your purpose? Is it why have you come out to Sinai? Is it why have you come to this moment in your life? I mean, in a certain way, this is like the ultimate midlife crisis, right? This is a man who's spent his life in a project, and his project has failed, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And the great question that he's asking himself is, what the hell am I doing here? What am I doing here? Yes, Vic?
Why are you here alone?
Yeah, why are you here alone? Why are you here alone? What are you trying to find out? And then he said, I am moved by zeal for the Lord. Kina. I am inflamed with religious passion. I want my people to be attached to God, to the God of hosts, for Israel has forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they're out to take my life. I am the last one. I am the last one who... And think of Moses coming down that mountain. Moses coming down the mountain has the sense that he's the only one, right? I am the last one who bears the faith of Israel. I'm going to be extinguished. They're out to get me too. I'm the last one, and I can't do it. I just don't have the strength. I just don't have the vision. I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. So God says, come on outside. Come on out. I want to show you something. Now remember Sinai? When we went to Sinai, what was it doing? The mountain was quaking. There was thunder. There was fire. There was a voice of, there was the scream of horns. And now you're going to get a really interesting replay of the Sinai narrative, only backwards, right? The Lord passed by, whatever that means. And it says, there was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by the power of the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the quake. And after the earthquake, fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. So all of the same pyrotechnics that we had at Sinai, and each one says what? That's not where you're going to find God. If you're looking for God in expressions of power, if you're looking for some sort of pyrotechnic expression of worldly power, that's not where God lives. Elijah, you're looking the wrong place. You're looking for love in all the wrong places. You're looking for God in all the wrong places. That's the problem. You keep looking for fire and earthquakes and wind and tornadoes. You're looking for a God who's gonna terrorize his people into faith. That's not the game anymore. That's not what needs to be done. And then the next phrase is a very difficult phrase to translate. So Rav Hillel's here, and he studies this thing, because this was a Bar Mitzvah Parsha, right? Kol demama daka. Now, forget the translation here, because it's wrong. Kol, the word kol, kuf with a kuf, not kaf, kuf, which means kol, which means a voice, or the sound of. Dimama is silence, right? Quiet. Daka means delicate, or exquisite, or fine. Kol demama daka, the sound of a delicate silence, or the sound of an exquisite silence, or the sound of a, I don't know, what did he hear? What did he hear? What? But what kind of silence? What? You remember, he just witnessed earthquake, wind, and tornado.
The interior voice.
So hang on. So then he hears a delicate, after all of that noise, all of that panoply, all of that, suddenly it's silent. A delicate, fine, exquisite, beautiful silence. Ellie, what? A peace. An introspection, an inner voice. Calm. A peacefulness.
Frustration.
Well, not yet. Not yet. We'll come into that. Yeah, Marcia. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes.
He heard the negative space of noise. You can look at a picture in negative space. He heard noise in negative space, and he learned that can convey information.
Okay, hang on a second. I want to turn you from your physicist hat to your mystical hat.
No, I mean.
No. I know. You said something beautiful. I want to expand on what you just said. It's quite beautiful, right? When you have a picture of an object, right? A photograph or a portrait of an object, right?
Yes.
You actually have a portrait of two things, right? You have the object, right?
And you have the inverse of the
and then you have the inverse of the object, which is the space that allows for the object to be, right?
Yes.
Right? In Zohar, in the mystical tradition, before there's creation, there's no thing. There's a space in which creation can happen, right? There's a space in which creation can happen. And that space is valuable because without that space, creation can't happen. God has to withdraw from that space, right? Sometimes you have to withdraw from a space in order to allow something to be, something to happen, right? If you have a relationship, Em, listen to this carefully, okay? When you go out on a date with a person,
Oh, God.
no, oh, I promised to teach your mother, I promised your mother I'd teach you life lessons, right?
You're killing me here.
No, listen.
Take the mic back.
Listen, no, this is important for you to know. The test of a great date.
Slay me, for I am no better than my fathers.
No, I won't. You are. And you sit across the table from someone you've invited out, and you make space for that person to express themselves, right? A lot of times when guys go out on dates with women, they talk, and at the end, you can always tell because who's finished their meal first, you don't make room for the other person to fill in the space. In a relationship, you've got to make space for the other, okay? You have to withdraw in and make space. So I think what you said was quite beautiful. Kol d'mamad daka is a space in which something can intervene, can exist, something can be new, something can enter the world. It can be the inner space. It's an inner space. It's a peaceful space. It's a calm space. But it's a space in which there's possibility. All of a sudden, Elijah realizes that all that noise has crowded out God. You can crowd God out of the world. Fear crowds out God. Power crowds out God. And you need an open space. So there's an open space. And into that open space, called mamad daka. And that, Elijah realizes, is the place of God in the world. Right? That's the place of God in the world. The Zohar, the mystical tradition called God, right? Ein Sof, there's nothingness. A place in which creation can be. Right? That's part of the ability of God to enter the world. You need to make space for God to enter the world. And when Elijah heard it, not the sound of the noise and the fire and the earthquake, but he heard the silence, he wrapped his mantle about his face, which is a sign of humility. That's the bride wrapping the veil around her face, right? And went out and stood at the entrance to the cave, right? And then he hears again, the second time, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he realizes the second time that the question isn't, what are you doing on Mount Horeb? What are you doing on Mount Sinai? But rather, what's your mission in the world? What are you really trying to accomplish in the world? What do you really want to do? And he says, I am moved for zeal for the Lord, the God of hosts. He repeats the same formula, but in a different way now, because he realizes what he did before was not the way to bring this people to God. Torn down altars, put your prophets to the sword, and they're out to take my life. And God says, go back and I'll tell you what you need to do. Now he's ready to go back because now he suddenly realizes, I don't want a God who's just a bigger bully than the God they're worshiping. I need a God who's a completely different kind of religious experience. A completely different kind of religious experience. I need to move this people, this is what Steve said before, I need to move this people from a God they appreciate because of their fear to a God they're willing to appropriate because of their hope, because of their idealism, because of their seeking a transcendent sense of meaning. They want to build a just society. They want to make themselves into something else. And that's a different kind of God than you embrace out of fear. And that's what Elijah realizes his task is. He realized that he got the job description all wrong the first time around. This is a different kind of God. And this is where he becomes the prophet. And in the later tradition, we'll finish now, the later tradition, he becomes the prophet who is going to initiate the perfect world. He becomes the prophet who's going to welcome the Mashiach. So you have in the prophet Malachi, who is the very last prophet of the Hebrew Bible, the statement, we read this Erev Pesach, I will send Elijah the prophet to you before the coming of the great and awesome day of Adonai. And what's he going to do? He will reconcile parents with children and children with parents, so that when I come, I do not strike the land with destruction. I'm going to bring you together. So you don't have to be afraid. And he becomes that prophet. That's why tonight, when you finish Havdalah tonight, the great tradition is if Mashiach is going to come, it's going to come on a Saturday night. Why? Because that's when all the fun is. Come on. Right? And you're going to sing a song tonight, Eliyahu HaNavi, Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu HaTishbi, Elijah who came from the town of Tishbi, Eliyahu HaGiladi, who came from the east, Gilead, Bimhera biyamenu, soon in our own day, Yahavo Eleinu, let him come to us, Mashiach ben David, with the Messiah, the son of David, Mashiach ben David, let this be the week that redemption comes. But redemption only comes when? When you give up this fear and you're prepared to embrace a God out of hope and out of love and out of loyalty and out of a sense of idealism. This is what Elijah comes to realize up on top of that mountain. So what is the Torah, what did the rabbis do by giving us this Haftorah? They said to us, Moses didn't finish the job. Because as long as that mountain is quaking and fire, and as long as all this noise and screaming and fighting, you're never going to get people that are going to say, I want this God because I want to create the world in the image of this blessing, and not simply out of fear. A God you embrace out of fear is never going to be a God that's going to bring blessing to the world. Blessing to the world only comes when you give it up, when you're ready to let go of the fear and say, I embrace this God out of a sense of shared idealism and of loyalty and of hope for something better. This becomes now the commentary on the golden calf story. Last thing, I give you a little bit of Heschel. Why did I give you a little bit of Heschel? Because it's the greatest book ever written about prophets anyplace. And why not? And for Heschel, you'll see what Heschel does is explain all the stuff we've talked about, because he says the most important thing you need to know about a prophet is that a prophet doesn't have words, a prophet doesn't see, a prophet feels what God feels. A prophet feels the frustration and the longing for a people, God's frustration with his people, and God's own longing for a relationship of love and loyalty, and that's what carries the prophet into his work. So go back and read the Haftorah, read a little Heschel. We'll see each other next week. Take care. Shabbos.
Do you think Paul Simon knew this when he wrote The Sound of Silence? It's all the same thing. Talking without speaking, hearing without listening, writing songs that voices